Hi, in this section, we're going to be talking about Vray materials. After setting up Vray, just going to start working with the materials. Just going to draw a plane and a box. And I'm just going to create a teapot, but I want the teapot to be on the box. If you click in here, you can see that always, whatever I draw, it's always on the 0 axis. So I just want to click on Auto Grid, and now I can just draw it over the box, which is great. Now, to access the material editors, you have to go Rendering, Material Editor, and as you can see, I have two options for Material Editor. I have the Compact Material Editor, and I have the Slate Material Editor. Technically, they are the same. The compact material editors works with based on menus, as for Slate material editors, they work as nodes. So technically, you can achieve the same result using either or. In this session, or in this course, we're going to be going through compact material editor because it's easier to start with. Later on, you can just go to Slate material editor. It's technically almost the same, but the way you work with it is a bit different. You can access this material editor from here, or you can use the shortcut icons in here. This is the material editor. As you can see, there's an arrow, so there's more than one option. So there's two. This is the compact, and this is the Slate material editor. Or you can press letter M on the keyboard for material editor. So this is basically the material editor we're going to be working with. This is the compact material editor. In case this is not what you have on your screen, you might have a Slate material editor by default. So this is the Slate material editor. It's going to open now. So in case this is what you got, so this is the Slate material editor. Just go to modes and go to the compact. Okay, this is it. After setting up all materials, so you can see all the materials I have in here are Vray MTL. And this is what we're going to be talking about in this session. So now, if I want to assign Vray materials to the scene, all I need to do, select the material, click and drag and drop it on the object. I can use this way, or I can select the material and then select the object or objects I need. In my case, I'm just going to select the box, select the material, and then go to this icon, assign material to selection. So it will automatically go to this selection. So I'm just going to do this again. So I have three materials, green, this color and this color over on all of this. Great. Now, as you can see on the materials or the spheres I have in here, you can see on the corners, I have this small triangle. These triangles over here, they indicates that these materials are been used in the scene. As for those are still new, never been used. If I select one of those objects, you can see the triangle of this materials, those triangles, the four triangles, the corners, convert to white. That means this is the materials been used on this object. That's great. So now I know which materials have been used, so I don't have to change them by mistake, and which one is the exact material for which object I'm working on. Great. Now, I'm just going to select the first material. I'm going to go here, and I'm changing its name. So I'm just going to say, let's say a floor. I'm going to name this material floor, or maybe let's say wood. I'm just going to select this material. I'm going to go, for example, whatever, let's say brick. Okay, and this material, I'm going to make it glass. Okay, in my case, in this session, we're not going to go through textures, so I'm not going to import any images for now, but just going to work around with basic material editor. Now, I just selected the name that I want for each material, and I just assigned the material on the specific object I want. Great. Now, if I want to see the material as this material, for example, as big size, all I need to do is just double click on that, and I have a window which will have only this material by itself. I can just make it bigger or smaller so I can see better the resolution or better the quality of the material I'm working with. And at the same time, you can just always right click here and you can change your roof from 3.2, 3 times 2, or 5 by 3, or 6 by 4. 6 by 4 is basically this how much spheres you're going to see at the same time in the material editor. This is not the maximum number of materials you're going to use. You have infinite number of materials, but you can see the maximum, this amount of materials at the same time. So if you go 5 by 3, you have less spheres, but you have on the left and on the right to become the same number. And you can use always 3 by 2, which I would like because I can see them a bit clear. So you can have more materials to the left and more materials downward. Great. So now I've just assigned the materials and now I want to play around with the values. Just gonna go to the diffuse and the basic parameter. The diffuse parameter, so I'm gonna just go to this one, is basically the color. It's the diffuse color. So if you go here, you can change the color from green to red to pink to blue to green to yellow to whatever, to orange and so on. You can just select whatever you want. And definitely you have all the values of RGB, the red, green, and blue, and you can play around with the hue, saturation, and the value. Let's say I'm just gonna make it brown, but maybe dark brown. Okay, maybe something like that. Great. Now, I can select the other one, the other material, which is this, and just make it maybe, I'm just gonna make it brick or maybe reddish. Okay, just gonna make it something like that. That's it. And the glass, just gonna give it a color, I don't know, maybe blue. Doesn't matter, that's just the color. Okay, so the first option I have is the diffuse color. The second option I'm gonna talk about is basically the reflection tab. As you can see, there's a small line in between the categories. So I'm gonna talk about this category, the diffuse. I'm gonna talk about the reflection, and I'm gonna talk about the refraction. For example, in reflection is basically I want to see this object, let's say the brown object, okay, which is going to be the floor later on. I want it to be reflective or not. So I'm just gonna make this a bit bigger, okay? I'm just gonna go to reflect, and I'm gonna go access this color. If you see in here, I have color of the reflection. The easiest way to work with the reflection is work with the black and white. So black means minimum reflection and white means maximum reflection. And if you want the reflection to be a specific color, then you have to work around with this. So I think the better way to start with is start with just the whiteness value, which is going to be black and white. Okay, and then later on you can play around with the colors to see what does that mean. So for example, I'm just going to make it purple. So you see the reflection is going to be purplish. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back to black, and I'm going to make the floor, for example, a bit reflective, something like that. Maybe more, maybe less. You can see always the value in here. And maybe this is it. Great. So I'm just going to assign a material in here. So I play with the reflection. This is the reflection, which means the value of the reflection, how much I want it to be reflective, the surface or not. So I made almost white. Let's make it white, total white. So that's going to be very reflective. Great. Now, if you go under this, you have something called glossiness. Glossiness, it means this reflection, how much I want it to be sharp or blurry. If the glossiness is 1, it means the reflection is sharp. As you can see in here, the light you can see and the reflection, it's very sharp. If you go glossiness less than 1, 1 is the maximum. If you go less than 1, for example, 0.9, you would see, you have to wait a bit because it has to render. You can see it becomes a bit blurry. And if you go less than 0.9, maybe 0.8, it will become blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. If you want the surface to be very blurry, reflective, but blurry, something like that, okay? So you have to go with the glossiness and make it lower than 1. So I'm just gonna keep this 1 for now, okay? And then the second option is Fresnel reflection. Okay. It's just playing around with the value by mistake. Okay, so now Fresnel reflection is basically, Fresnel is a physicist. Okay, he just did his experiment and noticed that the reflection differs in terms of the point of view. If you are looking to the surface perpendicular to the surface, the reflection is the least. But when you're talking about or looking on the the parallel areas, it will be the maximum reflection. For example, if I have this sphere in here, the least reflective area is this area in here. And the most reflective areas are the one which are almost parallel to my view, my point of view. So if I take off Fresnel reflection, so it will become all reflective the same. In my case, reflection is maximum white, so this will become a chrome or a mirror. So it's fully reflective. You can see in here there's like some kind of not clear what's going on. Just imagine the sphere is inside the box, which is open. So that's why this reflection is the opening of the box behind this box, behind my view. Okay, it's just behind me. So I can see, and there's a light in here that's giving this light and this shadow. Okay, so now you can see this is super reflective, and it's like a mirror or a chrome ball. So if you remove reflection, then the reflection, it does matter in here how much reflective I want it to be, but it's consistent from all angles. So it's going to be reflective in here, let's say 20%, and in here in 20%. Why? If you put this, let's say 100, you can see that it's going to be 100% reflective in here and 100% reflective on the corners. So that's why it's going to be a sphere like a chrome or a mirror. If you turn on Fresnel reflection, you would see that the percentage in here is less than the percentage in here of reflection. So it differs, which is more realistic. That's why it's always preferable to have Fresnel reflections on, unless you need something like a flat reflection on the surface to have equal reflection all over the surface, independent on the point of view, such as mirrors or chrome or specific materials. Now, if I want my reflection to be with Fresnel reflection, but I want this reflection to be more, as you can see, I just had white in here, so it's maximum. I cannot give it more. So what you can do, I can go in here, Fresnel IOR, which is linked or locked. So I'm just gonna unlock it, okay? And you can play with this value. By default, the value of IOR is 1.6. Now we're gonna go through it later on, but it's 1.6. So if I want it to be more, for example, 3, as you can see, the reflection will be much more now, but still working on the same Fresnel reflection ratio. So it's going to be more reflective in here, less reflective, but overall it's going to be more reflective. So if I need more reflection, then this is the case. If not, I just go lock and it go back to 1.6. So this is the original value, which is linked to the IOR in here. Okay, we're going to talk to that in a second. The third thing or the fourth thing I'm going to talk about is metalness. If I want this object to be metallic, so let's say I'm going to make it 0.5 metallic, you can see the type of the object, the material, how it behaves to reflection, it's a bit different. You see it's a bit darker, it's more metallic. So you can have it more metallic, let's say 100% metallic, so it's a metallic brown color, or a non-metallic brown color, which is going to be the same. So I'm just working with the metalness. So I can just bump this metalness a bit up, maybe all the way to 1 or maybe not, depending on the value. So this is basically talking about the reflection. I'm just going to go through this because these are the most important thing that we're going to be using for the basic level. So the reflection value from black to white, unless I need a different color. Glossiness, if I want the reflection to be blurry or not blurry. If I wanted to have Fresnel reflections or no, so based on the POV or not. And then I can play around with Fresnel IOR to bump the reflection more as a Fresnel reflections or not. And if I want metalness to make this object a bit metallic or not. That's it. Now, I'm just going to be, I'm good with that. So I have it some kind of, let's make it metallic, 0.5. And I'm just going to have the surface metallic brown, kind of metallic, not 100% metallic, but that's good. And it's very reflective with Fresnel on, which differs from the point of view. And that's it. Great. Just going to close this. Just going to go to the other one. And I'm going to make this same thing. I'm just going to make it reflective. But in my case, I'm just going to make it fully reflective. And I'm going to turn off Fresnel reflection. So I want it to be chrome or mirror. This box is going to become a mirror. And that's it. I don't want something else. And maybe I want the glossiness to be 0.9 to have it a bit blurry. That's it. That's great. So this is what I want. Now, I'm just going to go to this, the teapot, which is this material. In this material, just going to have this blue color. Reflection, I want this teapot to be reflective. And in my case, this is reflective. I love this reflection. and I want it to be blurry or not blurry, Fresnel reflection, and so on. I want this to be the same, so just reflection. I'm gonna go a bit down, and I'm gonna go through refraction. What's refraction? Refraction is basically transparency with index of refraction. Index of refraction is basically physics. So if the light passes through the object, it doesn't go straight, it will deviate. This deviation angle, it reflects, or technically it's responsible with the refraction. So I want to make this teapot to become glass. So I want it to be reflective. So I'm just going to go to reflection back to white, and I don't want glossiness to it. I want it to be clear, and Fresnel reflection is always on. And I'm gonna go and talk about refraction. Refraction is basically transparency, but the difference between refraction and transparency is basically refraction has index of refraction, which is the deviation of it. So I cannot see through it just directly, it will deviate like real glass. And this value is basically responsible for the deviation angle. Technically, if you search up on Google for IOR, you would see that real values there are for real objects. For example, let's say water is, the IOR for water is 1.33, and the glass is between 1.55 and 1.65. Diamonds is like 2.4 or 3, something like that. You can search for that. The best example for refraction is basically just put your finger inside the water, a glass of water. If you look at at your finger, you will see that the finger bends inside the water. This is basically refraction. So I want this glass to be refractive. So all I need to do, just go to the refraction. Same as reflection, you can have a refraction color or just stick with the black and white. So I just want it to be fully refractive. So I want it to be transparent glass, like that, like so. Glossiness, if I want this glass to be blurred, such as frosted glass. So the same value as glossiness in here, I have the glossiness in here for the refraction now, not for the reflection. And I have the IR. So the IR is basically depending on what we're doing. In my case, 1.6 is good for glass, so I'm just going to keep it 1.6. If you want it to be more less deviated, so you have to go closer to 1. 1 is basically vacuum. Okay, air is 1. I think 002 or something, maybe close to that number, which is almost 1, which is almost, you can see, I can see nothing. It's basically air. And the more you go, so 1.1, you can see I can start seeing this glass, 1.2, 1.5, and more, or less than 1. So you can just go through them and play around with the value depending on what kind of refraction. That's it. So now I have a refractive glass which has reflection also. So I'm just going to open it aside to see it a bit bigger. And definitely always it will take a bit of time because it's going to be rendering this. So now you can see I have this glass and this is what I want. So maybe IOR, as I said, like 1.1 I want it to be. So it's going to be more flat. So we have to wait a bit. This is it. As you can see, it's more close to air. It's like something I want it to be very transparent and without deviation. And the more I add IOR to it, it will have more deviation, and you can see it's more like the glass is more thick. And maybe this is what I want. It depends on the object you're working with. That's it. So we just talked about the diffuse part, which is going to be the color. I just talked about the reflection part, the reflection value, the glossiness if I want it to be blurry, reflection, Fresnel reflection if I want it to be on and off, and the reflection IR if I want my reflection to be stronger more than this value that I put in here, matterness if I want it to be metallic or not. Diffraction if I want it to be more transparent, and the index of refraction, how much deviated I want it to be. And definitely glossiness, the same as glossiness in here, is basically I want the refraction to be frosted or blurry in my case. Great. The last value I'm going to talk about is basically fog color. Fog color is basically the color of the refraction, the color of the glass. So by default, it's white. Maybe I want it to become maybe red, and I'm working with, let's say, kind of a Murano glass. So you can see now the glass is reddish or maybe bluish or whatever color I just select. And this is the value of the color I want. Now, like maybe this is good. I want it to be green glass in my case. and I want it to be, let's say, frosted. Let's make it heavy. So I'm gonna make it 0.6 maybe. Okay, I'm just gonna open it aside because it's going to take a bit of time to render, but I'm just gonna wait a couple seconds so it opens.